Hello, welcome back to the Wall of Unusual. I'm your host, Chris, the Keeper of the Unusual, and thanks for joining me for another episode. Now, this episode's actually kind of special. For the Halloween season, I thought I would tell a few scary stories from across Canada. Joining me today, actually, will be Brenda from the Horrifying History Podcast. You might remember her from the Ghost of Ted Bundy's episode. Me and her will be taking turns telling scary stories, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Now, for the first story I have is the story of Ghost Road. Now, this road is located in Port Perry, Ontario. It's a straight back road. At night, if you go there, you can't even see nothing. You can't even see your hand in front of your face. Legend goes, is a man bought his first bike. He was excited. It was brand new. He was riding it, and he decided to himself, hey, let me see how fast this bike could go. So he picked this stretch of road where he thought, hey, it's a straight shot. I can push this bike as fast as I can. He did so. He starts pushing his bike. He starts going faster and faster and faster. He starts thinking to himself, hey, this is amazing. I'm having an awesome time. This bike is holding up really well. This is awesome. Then all of a sudden, the look of dread shot across his face. He realized that the road was coming to a dead end. He quickly slammed on his brakes, but it was too late. He ended up crashing his bike into a tree. He himself ended up flying off the bike and landed on barbed wire, where he got decapitated. According to legend, his head rolled towards a boulder, and that was the end of this man. Some say if you go there late at night and you wait patiently in the dark, where there's just sounds of animals to keep you company, you'll actually see his headlight starts coming towards you, and you hear the sounds of his motorcycle, and all of a sudden he'll disappear, and if you turn around real quick, you'll see his taillights near the rock where his supposed head rolled to. Some say if you sit there on the rock itself, labeled Ghost Road, you'll feel sick and oozy. Some have reported them being pushed off. Others who try to take pictures of the motorcycle itself have not done so successfully. They have captured orbs. Even there are some reports of UFOs in the area. All I know is if you go to Ghost Road late at night, you might have a story or two of your own to tell.
There is a ghost story that has been told for centuries in the province of Quebec. The story of La Corriveau has taken on a legendary status, and she's considered to be Quebec's own boogeyman. But La Corriveau is no boogeyman. The story of La Corriveau is actually true. Marie-Joseph Corriveau was born in 1733 in New France, which was located where the current-day Quebec City sits. Back then, it was called New France, which was taken over by the British. Since the British government was new for those who were of French descent, this caused a lot of tension in the area. Not only were they now ruled by those who were considered to be their enemy, but as a new government, they were pretty disorganized. But none of this mattered to Marie when she was a teen. She was too busy planning to get married. At the age of 16, Marie got married to a local farmer. He died in 1760, leaving Marie alone to care for their 3 children. But Marie, she wasn't single for long. Less than 2 years after husband number 1's death, Marie got married to another farmer from the area, Louis-Étienne Douillet. Marie and Louis's marriage was the talk of the town. This was because Marie's father Joseph had several public fights with Louis over property and business dealings. Soon, the town gossips had even more to talk about when Marie unsuccessfully petitioned the crown to get permission to leave her husband on the grounds that he was physically abusive to her. But even though her request was refused, Maria and Louis's marriage, it wouldn't last. That was because less than 3 years after they were married, Louis was found dead in the barn on their property. Initially, everyone thought that this was just a tragic accident. In the beginning, it was believed that Louis died after a horse kicked him in the head, but soon afterwards, people started to gossip that his death was no accident. These rumors changed the investigators' focus from an accident to a murder. After hearing the local gossip, British soldiers decided to take another look at Louis's head wounds. They determined that it wasn't a horse hoof that did that damage. It was something like a pitchfork. since local gossip said that Marie and her father Joseph, or both of them, murdered Louis, the soldiers charged them both with murder. Both of them were tried. Joseph, he was found guilty of murder. Marie, she was found guilty of being his accomplice. Both were sentenced to death. This is when Joseph snapped. After he was sentenced to hang for his crime, he confessed that it was actually Marie who murdered Louis. The only reason he didn't turn her in was that he didn't want her to be executed for her crime. When the soldiers confronted Marie with this confession, she broke too. She admitted that she murdered her husband using a hatchet. Now, this greatly embarrassed the British. This, in combination with the newest local gossip that Marie probably killed her first husband too, they decided to have a second speedy trial. But the problem was that the King of England did not approve a second trial, but they did it anyway. Marie was sentenced not just to hang, but her body to be displayed as a warning to others in a metal gibbet. So, what is a gibbet? After an execution, the body of those determined to be a traitor would be put inside a human-shaped cage that was suspended from a post on a roadside. This would be left there as a message to anyone who sees it and to rot. So Marie died in April of 1763 at the end of a hangman's noose. Her body was then gibbeted and left on display for about 5 weeks in nearby Pont-l'Évêque. Eventually, Marie's remains and the metal gibbet were taken down and buried in an unmarked grave in a nearby churchyard. But then, in 1851, the gibbet was unearthed. When the church decided to enlarge their graveyard, they accidentally dug up Marie and her gibbet. But Marie's cage did not get reburied, it went on the road. Within months, the gibbet was exhibited in Montreal, Lévis, and Quebec City before it got into the hands of P.T. Barnum. He put it on display in his New York Museum in August of 1851 with a plaque that read, "From Quebec." From there, the cage went to the Boston Museum and then the Essex Institute in Salem, Massachusetts. Then, in the early 2010s, members of the Lévis Historical Society in Quebec found the cage in the Peabody Essex Museum, who had forgot about it for about 100 years or so. Marie's cage was repatriated back to Quebec in 2013, and it now sits in the Museum of Civilization in Quebec City. That's where I saw it, and honestly, it is creepy with a capital C. But what is just as creepy is her ghost that is said to regularly walk the Plains of Abraham, which is a historic area in the Battlefields Park in Quebec City. It was there that Marie lost her life, and also where the legend of La Corriveau started to grow. In the legends of today, Marie killed her first husband as well, even though there is no evidence to support this. Then, the stories expanded the number of dead husbands to 7, and they were all murdered once they discovered that Marie was a witch. Like all evil witches of legend, Marie vowed that she would return from the grave, and her corpse did not rest in her cage that allegedly was buried at a crossroad. Instead of being gibbeted for about 2 months and buried in a graveyard, the stories now say that Marie hung in her cage for years before her body disappeared. It was claimed by the devil himself. In other stories, Marie's spirit is still attached to her cage, but she clings onto the backs of lone travelers. She demands that she be carried to the nearby St. Lawrence River to attend a witches' Sabbath on Orleans Island. But for the most part, the legends of Marie has made her Quebec's version of a boogeyman, with parents across the province telling her story to scare their children into being good little boys and girls.
Our next story comes from Newfoundland. This story takes place at the Supreme Courthouse in downtown St. John's. It is the home to a ghost called Catherine Snow. Catherine Snow lived a very hard life. Her husband John Snow was a very abusive man. He wasn't afraid to raise his hands to his wife. But throughout her life, Catherine was very close to her cousin, Tobias Mandeville. The two were inseparable and had a very deep friendship. A servant that worked for the Snows, a man by the name Arthur Springs, said that their friendship went a bit beyond that. One night, her husband, Jon Snow, came home and found the two. An argument broke out, and then all of a sudden, without a trace, Jon Snow disappeared. A few days later, a cop was walking along his beat and found blood on a fishing stage. Right away, the police thought that this was the blood of Jon Snow, and Catherine and Travis killed him and threw his body out to sea. And that's what the rumor was throughout town. Quickly, Arthur Spring and Tobias Mandeville were placed under arrest for the murder of Jon Snow, but Catherine fled into the woods. Tired, beaten, and also pregnant and hungry, she had no choice, but she turned herself in. As soon as she did, all three of them were put on trial. The judge presiding over the trial, after all the evidence was presented, read the jury instructions to an all-male jury. After a bit, the jury came back with a verdict of guilty. The sentence for Arthur Spring, Travis Mandeville, and Catherine Snow to be hung until dead, and their bodies to be displayed till rotten as a warning to others. The two, Travis and Spring, were hung right away, but Catherine was allowed to have her baby. After she gave birth, she was quickly brought up to the hangman's noose. Before she was hung, her last words were, "I was a wretched woman in life, but I had no part in this, and I'm as innocent as a child." And then she was hung. After that, she was buried. Word spread out through town that people have actually seen Catherine Snow wandering around the Catholic cemetery and also around the area where she was hung. Staff to this day have reported in the Supreme Courthouse in downtown St. John's, they have actually seen her ghost wandering around the hallways. Some staff had said we heard footsteps, and when we looked down to see if anybody was there, no one was there. Elevators would stop floor to floor, open up, and no one's there. Elevators would close and go back down. A lot of strange things have happened within the Supreme Courthouse. 2012, a retrial was actually done for Catherine with modern lawyers and modern prosecutors. After all the evidence was looked at, the new verdict came through, not guilty. The prosecution and the Crown said that all the evidence that was put against Catherine Snow was circumstantial and there was no proof that she committed the crime. Some say she still wanders around the courthouse looking for her lost baby. But if you visit this courthouse, you yourself might see a glimpse of her.
Amherst is a town located in Nova Scotia, 12 miles or 22 kilometers south of the Northumberland Strait. It started out as a small village in approximately 1672 that was settled by the Acadians, who were individuals descended from the French that settled in the New France colony of Acadia during the 17th and 18th centuries. The town was resettled by the British in 1764 after the Acadians were forcibly removed from the area during the 7 Years' War. During the 1800s, Amherst became a very important shipbuilding center, but it soon became known for another reason: the Great Amherst Mystery. The main character of this story was a young lady named Esther Cox, who moved in with her married sister Olive Teed and her husband Daniel. The house was pretty crowded, with Daniel's brother John, a brother and a sister of Esther and Olive's, and Olive and Daniel's 2 children all being under the same roof. Everything started in August of 1878, when 18-year-old Esther was held at gunpoint by a male that she thought was her friend. He attempted to sexually assault her, and the trauma from this left her very distressed. Soon afterwards, strange things started to happen. Everyone in the house started to hear knocking, banging, and rustling sounds during the night. Not long after this, Esther started suffering from some sort of seizures that caused her body to swell and caused her to have fevers as well as the chills. When objects in the house started flying around on their own, the now terrified family called a doctor in hopes to find out what was going on. When the doctor arrived, he went to see Esther, who was lying in her bed. This is when he started to hear scratching noises. Both he and Esther then watched as words started to appear etched into the wall by the head of Esther's bed. The words said, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." As you all could imagine, getting that message did not do Esther any good. The following day, the physician gave Esther sedatives to calm her and help her sleep as the noises got worse and objects were now regularly flying around the house. It continued like this for months, even though Esther was being kept under close watch. But then in December, Esther became sick with diphtheria. No activity happened when Esther was ill or when she was recovering at another sister's home. But as soon as she returned to Olive's house, things picked up again. Not long after this, things became much worse when fires would start in various places around the house. When this started happening, Esther started to claim that she saw the ghost that was doing all of this. She said that the ghost told her that it would burn the house to the ground unless she left the house for good. In January of 1879, Esther moved in with another family, but the activity followed her. Some people were sympathetic to Esther's plight, but others believed that she was doing all of this herself. As word spread, many people wanted to investigate what was happening, since Esther now claimed that several different spirits were attached to her. They communicated to those around Esther using knocking or rapping sounds. Through this, it was determined that Esther was being haunted by a former shoemaker named Bob Nickel, Peter Cox that was allegedly Esther's relative, and a ghost that was unknown to Esther who was named Maggie Fisher. Not long afterwards, a man named Walter Hubble came to town. He believed that he was an authority on stage performers like himself that tricked audiences into believing that he was performing magical acts. He thought for sure that he could expose what was really going on here. Now, Walter wrote a book about his experiences called The Great Amherst Mystery, and he wrote about his experiences of when he moved into the residence to investigate what was happening to Esther. In the weeks that followed, Walter reported that he saw objects moving on their own, fires and other items appearing out of nowhere, and all of this occurred when Esther was in full sight. He then started to communicate with the spirits in the residence and claimed that there were now 3 more: Mary Fisher, Jane Nickel, and Eliza McNeil. Now that Walter saw all of this with his own eyes, he decided to act. He didn't want Esther to get rid of the ghosts that were terrorizing her and her family. He decided to help her use them for profit. He gave assistance to Esther to set up a speaking tour where she would tell her story, but things didn't work out the way that Walter and Esther hoped. When the audience would hear Esther's story, they would heckle her. So Esther, she decided to return to Amherst, and then she got a job to try to put all of this ghost stuff behind her. But after her employer's barn burnt down, he accused her of arson. Esther was convicted and was sentenced to 4 months in prison. After serving only 1 month, Esther was released, and the paranormal phenomena stopped for good.
For my last story comes from PEI. This is the ghost story of Captain Kidd. Now, a man was out for a stroll along the coast of PEI when he noticed a ship out to sea. He noticed a smaller boat disembarking from the ship and coming towards him. As the boat got near, he quickly hid. As he observed the people coming off the boat, he recognized them as pirates, and one of them was the infamous Captain Kidd, a pirate known throughout the 7 seas. The man scared, he stayed hidden as he knew Captain Kidd's reputation. He watched as the pirates dug a hole and put 3 treasure chests in the hole and dug it filled it back up. Captain Kidd looked around to see if anybody was there, satisfied, got back on the boat, and left. Now, the man at that moment had a very bright idea. He would build a smaller boat to make it more easier for him to just go towards the spot and transport the treasure back to his home. He'd be rich. So he quickly set to work on building a smaller boat. A few days went by, then all of a sudden he got word from London that Captain Kidd had been captured and killed. So the man quickly sped up his efforts. After the boat was done, one dark night, he set sail. He put his boat maybe a few inches back from where the spot was so no one could really see him. He walked to the hole and noticed that the hole had already been dug up. Was he too late? He quickly ran over to the hole and looked down to see none other than Captain Kidd looking back up at him in the hole. Captain Kidd looked at him and said, "You're here for me, treasure, and don't you deny it." But you're too late, you scallywag. Someone else has already taken it. Captain Kidd crawled out of the hole, filled it back up, and plunged a shovel where the hole was. Afterwards, he just disappeared into thin air. But the shovel was left. The man picked up the shovel and looked at it, and carved on the handle was a skull and crossbones, known as the Jolly Roger. This man would tell his tale after a pint or two at the local pub. But for anybody that tried to challenge him on it, saying he made up the story and the story wasn't true, the man was more than pleased to quickly produce the shovel that he thought was left behind by the infamous Captain Kidd. Hey guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This is my first 2-part episode. Now the first part is coming out at midnight on the 17th, and the second one's actually come out the 31st on Halloween, just in time for the spooky season. Again, Brenda actually is going to be dropping the same episode at the same time I am, so give her a follow and a listen. Her podcast is awesome, and so hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to stay unusual, my friends.